A lot of people will say, a great deal of success comes from being at the right place at the right time. It sounds like a whole lot of luck. Do you agree with that?
I think for a startup to be successful, it has to be like a perfect storm. It has to be a very good idea. The team has to be spot on and work really well together. The macroeconomic environment has to be ready for that idea. And it has to be a business that is willing to take risks, but also can pivot. In the tech world, if you are literally changing an idea from one day to the next, you call it a pivot, and it's completely acceptable.
In your book, By Invitation Only, you talk about the value of naysayers. I'm sure there must be a moment for every person building a startup where, if enough is enough. Is there space for that?
I think there is value in really listening to naysayers when you have a startup idea or even after you've started a business, because it helps you refine your idea, and maybe those naysayers are giving you really valuable feedback. And it's easy to put on kind of shutter blinds when you're in a startup and to just be so passionate about your concept. I think passion and adrenaline are absolutely critical. It's what late at night when you're trying to fall asleep keeps you up at night. You have to have thick skin though.
And what kinds or what types of personalities do you think have the highest likelihood of success?
I think you're exactly right. A startup really takes a lot out of a person. It takes blood, sweat, tears. The ones that are going to be most successful and happiest are ones that do have fire in their belly, that do believe in a vision, and who like working hard, who aren't afraid to roll up their sleeves and dive in, who maybe don't love bureaucracy.
And what types of people do you think are not likely drawn to launch a startup, to build a startup, but should?
In order for a startup to succeed, in my opinion, not every individual on the team should be wide-eyed, optimistic personality that never sees an idea they don't like. It's important to have people on that team who can put some checks and balances. And so by nature, you might think these process-oriented, slightly more risk individuals wouldn't be suited for a startup, but I do think startups actually need that personality type.
I'm sure launching a product, I'm sure building a startup is very tiresome. There's a lot of processes that you must prepare for, but what do you as a mentor tell people do save stomach and energy for this part of the process?
A startup is a marathon, but it is a marathon where you are having sprints, where you're slowing down, taking a break, a glass of water, and you're sprinting again. But it is a long potential road ahead. And you also don't know how many miles you're going to be running necessarily. Entrepreneurs should save their energy for the big things. And a lot of times I tell entrepreneurs, don't sweat the small stuff. Not everything is going to go according to plan, and that's why you have to be so flexible and nimble. If you make a mistake, pick yourself up, jump right back on that horse, and never make the same mistake twice.
How do you stay nimble while maintaining the level of growth in terms of the team, of the operations?
If there's too much bureaucracy in a startup, it's going to slow you down, and then your competitors are going to beat you. The more that you can let small teams have freedom to innovate, the faster the pace of innovation will be.
Having had the experience of being in that room full of men trying to get venture capital for Guild, what kinds of advice do you give women in your position, whether they're trying to pitch a fashion product or something that's entirely different, but being a woman?
It's no secret that the venture capital community is dominated by men. The good news is, I believe, from a female perspective, the startup community has gotten a lot more female friendly. Investors are starting to get a lot more open to investing in women because they're realizing that it makes so much sense. And many of these female co-founding teams have created big disruptive companies. I give female founders some advice when they're going to meet with a venture capital firm to walk in with confidence and gravitas. I don't think that they should suppress their, let's say, femininity or fashion side or beauty side if ultimately the company that they're building is in that particular industry. If you are in the fashion industry with a startup and going into pitch to venture capitalists, I tell these women, dress as fashionably as you can, wear high heels, put on an outfit that gives you confidence and that shows that you're an expert in the product that you're ultimately trying to build.
What is the role of a mentor, and you as a mentor, what kinds of things will appeal to you? If I'm somebody with an idea for a startup and I come to you, what should I tell you or what should I project?
I think I'm most passionate and effective in mentoring other people when maybe I see a little bit of myself in that individual.
When I talk to people who are trying to build a startup, they say, well, you know, one of the things that I want to know is whether or not I should have a co-founder. It tends to be compared to a marriage where skills and interests are complementary to each other rather than similar or parallel. How much of that is relevant? I mean, how much, because you end up spending so much time with a person that you kind of want to have a friend with you, but at the same time, friends usually do have similar interests.
I personally am a huge fan of having co-founders, and in the case of Guilt, we were 5 co-founders, and we had very complementary skills and experiences. One of our co-founders, Alexis Maybank, happened to be one of my very best friends, and still is one of my very best friends. But I wouldn't recommend starting a business with just any friend. It has to be someone who you really trust and maybe already know or have interacted with in a business context. So we had this sort of commonality of being interested in business, always talking about our careers, and also Alexis has always been my favorite sample sale wing woman, so it made so much sense for us to do that business together.
Are you having a co-founder now in your new venture?
I'm a big believer in co-founders, so I feel very lucky in the case of Glam Squad to be working with an amazing team. I really think it's hard for any one individual to do a business all by themselves. Also, it gets lonely.
I think that in both cases with Glam Squad and with Guilt, they're the kinds of ideas that I personally would use. And I say to you, thank you, finally. You know, that's the reaction that I'm sure you get quite often. How would you recommend people go about finding ideas?
In the case of both companies, these were products or services or ways of shopping or having experiences that I wanted. I personally think it's so much more fun to start a business for which you are the customer and for which you have a need so that you can really understand what the customer wants.
But one of the things that really works out for me to understand what the startup is about, what the idea is about, is sort of the mashup idea. Is that a good way to pitch? Is it a good way to sort of use already functioning concepts or even come up with an idea?
I think that a lot of ideas can come from this concept of one company meeting another company, or one concept that's successful in the United States, let's bring it to Latin America or to Asia or to Europe or vice versa. But I know many venture capitalists that really have a pet peeve when they see an investor deck that says, you know, we are launching the X of Y. They don't want to hear it that way. They want to see creativity and a fresh explanation of a solution to some sort of a problem.
You are in the process now of, after great success, starting over. What kinds of patterns do you think you've been able to extract from your experience of Guilt into your new endeavor?
I am coming to this new venture with so many mixed emotions, passion, excitement, but also a lot more experience and wisdom than I had when I co-founded Guilt. I was 30. I have learned by doing, and so many of the lessons that I've learned over the past 7 years will certainly be valuable. One of the things that I know will be so much easier is that my Rolodex of contacts has only grown.
I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs are excited because they're passionate, they have their idea very clear in their minds, and they just want to jump right into the VC funding. What did you learn from your rounds of trying to get the funding that you recommend people against or for?
Every entrepreneur and every startup company is going to take a very different approach to venture capital funding. Some entrepreneurs prefer to own the majority of their business for as long as possible and maybe aren't as interested in growing to such a large level, whereas other businesses might be very capital intensive and might require large amounts of funding in order to scale and in order to be the dominant player in a particular category. So it's very personal, but I do think if you're taking money from a venture capitalist, this person, this company is going to be with you in good times and in bad times. And you really, just as a venture capitalist is doing their due diligence on you, you and your company, you should do the same. There's a lot of capital available right now for great entrepreneurial ideas. So I think some of the best entrepreneurs out there should have the attitude of, I'm going to get funding. I just want to make sure I get funding from the best individual and the best firm possible for my particular startup.
What are the advantages and the disadvantages of being the first in the game?
Advantages of being the first in a particular industry are that you have a running head start. So if you can move quickly and you can gain market share, then it makes it harder for other competitors to jump in and follow suit. But in these days, there's a lot of capital out there. So if venture capitalists or entrepreneurs see some good ideas starting to take off, you can throw a lot of money at an idea and all of a sudden a competitor can jump in. So that's something for entrepreneurs to just be kind of aware of.
So if you're an entrepreneur and you have a great idea and you believe in it, but then you get out there and you realize that somebody else is already doing it, what's the best thing you should do? Should you join them?
Yes, I think it depends on the particular scenario. So two startups could merge and therefore take out the competition and be more effective against other competitors. Maybe one player will ultimately kind of disappear or get acquired by someone else. And it's very possible for startups to, over time, kind of find their niche. So in some cases, it could be one competitor takes a more high-end route and the other competitor takes a more mass market approach.
I know you're very excited about this new venture. You're jumping into a new startup, so starting over a startup. What is it about?
I'm thrilled to be joining the founding team of Glam Squad as their CEO. I think the product that Glam Squad offers is something that every woman should have access to. On-demand beauty services in your home or in your office, getting your hair done, getting your makeup done, and there's so many other potential opportunities for growth in this category. So all women should feel like they have access to the type of Glam Squad that celebrities have, but at an affordable price.
Is there a curve? Is there a story you can tell me with a drawing of what went on at Gilt and those moments where you were about to, or those moments where you really made those quantum leaps? And I'll give you
I'm not really an artist, so bear with me. But when I think about the membership growth in the early stages of Gilt, we launched our business before we actually had our first online event. Alexis and I reached out to every single person we knew and reached out to every contact. And so we got an initial, I think it was about 13,000 members to join Gilt, to join a concept that they had no idea if they'd actually want to shop before we did our first sale. And so I guess you can kind of do like a bump like that. Word of mouth was really critical to our business. So we had a referral system. And then we had a moment in early 2008, about 6 months after we launched, where Gilt was mentioned on a TV show called The View, and our membership nearly tripled in a matter of hours. And that was a very exciting moment. It was also incredibly stressful for me from my point of view, because I had to go out and source triple the amount of inventory from one day to the next to satisfy the consumer demand. So that's sort of where the hockey stick started to take off as our membership grew, and ultimately so did our revenues.
So The View was great, but it was also a scary moment. You have to compensate for all of those new members, right?
TV and PR are incredibly valuable to a consumer-facing business, and I think they're critical. But when you have this sort of moment where you might get a huge uptick in your audience, that can also be really challenging on the actual product or service that you're offering. So be ready.
Well, thank you so much, Alexandra. It was wonderful talking to you, and hopefully we'll meet again in the future soon enough when you've already launched and have a Glam Squad working, and we'll be able to test it out as well.
Thank you for having me.